Well, greetings everyone, and it is another Monday night, and welcome to an imperfect union. A lot of very interesting comments from different people uh, on the right this week concerning the Rittenhouse trial. Let me see, where is everyone? Uh, where is? Let's see. Uh, Excuse me, I'm just trying to see where some of our people are tonight. I was hoping that there would be a little more turnout than just me. But anyway, as I was saying, there seems to be a lot of uh, turnout from the right. Um, and who's this? Okay. Um, Give me 1 minute here. Uh, okay. So one, and where's Miss Sims? Okay. Mr. Scott. Yes. Yes. Okay. Uh, Let me see. Maybe I did not. Okay, let me see. Let me see what's going on here. Um, okay. Uh, okay. Okay. Anyway, let's see what's going on here. uh, okay. Um, okay. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. But as I was saying, it seems that there are a lot of people in the right that really are using this Rittenhouse verdict as a stamp of white approval and white supremacy. Um, when you, let's think about this. Here's a young man, 17 years old at that particular time. Um, from what we have heard of this young man, is not a necessarily bright student, um, but yet and still, he's getting calls to be an intern for some of the, how should I put it, uh, less um, than desirable members of Congress, such as Matt Gaetz. Um, Matt Gaetz and some of the other senators. I mean, Gaetz is supposedly or allegedly facing charges concerning sex with uh, minors. Uh, okay, let's try this again. Seems Bill didn't get the memo. Okay, we'll send Bill the memo again. Uh, okay, let's try. See if we can send this to Bill again. Okay, let's see. Maybe there's something wrong with my browser and it just won't send it to people, but we'll see. I've sent a couple. Where did I was talking about Mr. Rittenhouse and the availability of GOP internships for this young man. I mean, imagine uh, the actual people that have been lining themselves up, thinking of this particular position for years, maybe aspired to this position, and here comes a young man in whose only qualification is that he shot three people that were at a Black Lives Matter rally. Let's talk a little bit about this self-defense kick, since everyone wants to seem to think uh, that this was self-defense. Okay, let's start at the beginning. The young man lives in Illinois. He leaves his house in Illinois and goes to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Okay. Uh, okay. Um, and according to him, he carries at least three items with him: a medical bag, an AR-15 type weapon with extra magazines. Now, he proceeds to go across state lines from Illinois to Wisconsin, and he's being driven by his mother. They go to his friend's garage, and he is left there with other people guarding this business. Okay. So let's go to item number two. Here's a minor that is given a weapon by an anonymous donor. Okay. An anonymous donor. So you're a parent. Your son comes in to the house with a semi-automatic weapon and says, "Look, mommy, look what someone has given me." It is not your first responsibility as a parent to, number one, see who this person is giving your child a weapon without your permission. That's number one. Well, that's number two. Sorry. Your 17-year-old son comes home with a bulletproof vest given to him by the sheriff's department, allegedly. As a parent, where are you sending my child where he needs an automatic weapon and a bulletproof vest at 17 years old? Parental responsibility. You always talk about it when it comes to the black neighborhoods and black on black crime. Where's the parents? Where's the parents? Well, in this case, the parents were sitting in the driver's seat taking a minor with a weapon to an intense situation. If you want to use the terminology allowed by the judge, a place where there was looting and rioting. You went to protect someone else's property. Where in the world is the responsibility of a parent when you take your 17-year-old child to protect someone else's business in another state? Let us proceed. Encountering people, he runs across one gentleman that tries to punch him in the face, and another gentleman with the skateboard. These two men are now deceased. One tries to punch him in the face, the other attacks him with the skateboard. If you are trained properly, why not shoot them below the waist? Which, of course, brings in the line between assault and attempted murder. If you shoot someone below the waist, it can be broken down to an assault. If you shoot them above the waist, meaning body mass, where most military and law enforcement are taught now, center mass, those are considered kill shots. And also the ammo. The ammo of these weapons is used very precisely to maim, if not kill. In other words, the action of the bullet of an AR-15 is meant to shred, to break bones, to debilitate, as you look at the other young man uh, that no longer has the use of his limbs, sorry. And this is because of the action of the bullet. So, you have a minor intentionally going across state lines with a loaded weapon, with lethal ammo, put in a dangerous situation that he himself created. And the first thing that you want to cry is self-defense. Now, let's go on here. Uh, let's see. I see Bill here, but I don't see Bill.
Uh-oh.
We can see you, but we don't see you.
Gotcha. Let me see if there's what's going on with that.
Anyway, I'll go on now. I see that. Oh, we had the tree. We had the tree. Okay.
What's happening with the...
Anyway, glad you could join us tonight. It seems that I'm having trouble when I send you guys the link to StreamYard. But anyway, I'll go on. As I was saying, you have a miner with a loaded weapon being taken across state lines to perform guard duty on someone else's business. And the people that are attacked cannot be called victims. And now they're stuck with the title of looters and rioters. And this gentleman is free. So, was I surprised by the verdict? No. Was I upset by the verdict? No. Do I think the verdict was proper? No. But I understand where I live and the times that I'm living in. Because believe me, as a 74-year-old black man, I've been here before. This is not my first rodeo. For some of you, it might be. And for some of you, these are just the rantings of an old man. But I've been through this. When you think of what happened to the rioters in 1967, what happened to the looters in 1972, and you can go back to Cory Booker and some of these other people that are in Congress. So I'm not just picking on white people per se. But we heard that, Bill.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out.
So,
So I'm switching computers. I have one computer that's in the process of going through a Windows update. So I'm going to switch from that one to this one and see if that fixes it.
well, that may.
Well, we're
But
about
we
to, yeah. But yes, you can at least hear me. So there's that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and what I was talking about before we get off into the other case, I was talking about the Rittenhouse case, and I was one of the things that I was wondering, and perhaps things have changed since uh, I was in, my criminal cycle, but I remember there were things like the RICO Act. And if you want to know what the RICO Act is, you can ask a lot of brothers that are still in the penitentiary now that went to the penitentiary before or during the three strikes law. In the RICO Act, if you participated, for instance, uh, I see Bill is back, and there you are in live and living color. So, as I was saying, I was talking about the Rittenhauer uh, case,
Yes, Kyle Rittenhouse case. Yes.
and I was saying, that for me, this is kind of old hat.
Yes. Oh,
The,
yes. Even for me, and my hat might not be as old as your hat, but I was, as we've said before, disappointed but far from surprised. From the judge's instructions to the jurors to, I mean, there was a long list of to how the physical proximity that at certain points Cal Rittenhouse was allowed to have with the judge to, I mean, it's a long list of things that we all saw coming. And remember, I mean, there was nobody ever found legally culpable in the Move case in Philadelphia, where they literally blew up buildings with children in them. I mean, why would I be surprised, James? Why would I be surprised? I could, without thinking hard, I could name 50 cases, right, where something equally heinous is played out in the legal system, sometimes more heinous, has played out in the legal system. This the only thing that's changed is I think people's expectations may have changed a little bit, and the level of access we have to information is those two things have changed. But the other stuff, come on, same
yeah,
as it ever was.
yeah, but I do have to agree with you about the levels of information. Uh, the problem is, it seems that people have forgotten how to think. And when I say that, I mean, you can read the Bible, you can read the Quran, you can read the Tibetan book, whatever religious book
Yep.
that you want to read,
Yep.
and you can find various versions of it almost everywhere. It is up to you to accept, reject that information, sort it through your brain, and at one time come to a logical explanation at one time. It seems that that part has been forgotten, the logical explanation. It's just come to whatever suits you.
Well, here's what I will say. And we've talked at various points in the past about what people know, what people don't know, and what people think they know. Most people do not understand how things actually work in terms of the court system. And since most people's information about the legal system comes from TV shows, I'm not surprised. If you watch television, and most Americans do, what you think happens, what you believe happens, is when a case is brought. Someone who is usually very, very guilty, right, and obviously guilty, or obviously innocent, right, is involved, and the noble, right, attorney of, the state's attorney who is always, forthright and honest and not thinking about their metrics, not thinking about promotions. No, they just want to put bad guys behind bars, right? What most people don't know is the average time someone stays in a state's attorney office, in a large state's attorney's office, about 3 to 5 years. And you spend that whole time trying to stack your numbers so that you can get a better gig someplace else, right? Or you can position yourself in places where there's elected positions like district attorney or state's attorney, but those elected positions, or attorney general, sorry, where attorney general is an elected position, to have a strong enough wind behind your back in terms of how you are perceived to be a legitimate candidate for, say, a attorney general race. So you've got to have a high conviction rate, right? Now, you can get a high conviction rate one of a couple of different ways. One is you can only go to court with very winnable cases. And that's what a lot of prosecutors do. They only go to court if they know they're going to win, right? That's one way to make sure that you have a very high conviction rate. It means you're either not bringing a lot of things to, you're letting things sort of die on the vine because you don't think they're imminently winnable, or you're cutting a lot of deals, right? You're making sure that you might not be getting the convictions you want, but you're getting a conviction that counts on your tally marks. My mother was a former, what they call Commonwealth's attorney in the state of Virginia. First black and the first woman in the city of Chesapeake, in fact, to be a Commonwealth's attorney. She ran into a lot of old whatever network stuff in her time there, and eventually left after a couple of years to go into private practice, and later decided really what she found her legal home was 20-something years she worked with Tidewater Legal Aid, rendering legal aid and finding attorneys, matching them up who want to do pro bono work with people who needed legal counsel but couldn't afford it. And that's really where, that's where she fit. That's where her talents, her skills, and where she was needed all kind of came together. But what really happens, right? The way the sausage is really made. You look at things. You say, is the defendant poor? If the defendant is poor, you have a very good chance of convicting them. Is the defendant black or close to black, right? Then you have a very good chance of getting a conviction, right? Is there something about them that is scary or alienating to a jury, right? Which includes being black. But those things are things that help you to get a conviction. You're looking to win, right? You're trying to get up your win rate, your numbers, get your numbers up. So the reason that you always want to prosecute someone poor, one is that means they can't afford private counsel, and two, it means that they can't raise bond, right? They can't get a cash bail together, meaning they're not going to be able to assist in their own defense as much because they're going to be stuck in county. And all the numbers you can pull show, conclusively, that people who are not able to get bonded out, who are not able to raise the money for cash bail, are much less likely to be successful, right, in avoiding being convicted. Now, when someone has a lot of support, great legal counsel, and then in the case of this particular, Ricky Schroeder and other people, the Black Rifle Coffee Company or whatever, and others doing fundraisers and all these other things, the NRA and others throwing money into your legal defense fund so you can afford essentially the best that money can buy, or something close to the best that money can buy. That's a hard conviction to get, first of all. This is the kind of thing where they would have, if it weren't for so much attention being paid, they wouldn't have brought a case right away, right? They would have hoped for, wished for, and waited for maybe something to fall into the lap so it would make it more likely they could either cut a deal or get a conviction.
But see, Bill, here's another thing that you have to realize, and I'm saying this from the other side of the tracks here, because whenever I got in this particular type of situation, I found that there were three things that I needed to put in place. Number one, my lawyer would usually come to me with either a list or, sliding a dollar figure across the table. And we would settle on the method of payment. That would be number one.
Sure.
Number two would be, as you said, make sure that you get out on bail, because you can't do anything from inside.
Nope.
And number three, you wait for the right judge.
Right.
And that's the most important. You wait for the right. Doesn't matter how many extensions that you need, or whatever. How many you might have to throw the lawyer a few extra bucks or whatever, but you need the right judge on the bench.
Right. As many continuances as it takes. But yes, correct. I'm with you on that. Um, I think what a lot of people don't realize is how many things can tilt, right? Things either with you or against you. So there were some questions about why certain things didn't happen. Well, some of these things couldn't happen. That's why they didn't happen. The defense wanted to do things they could not do. There are very strict instructions that were given in this case by the judge about what kinds of things would and would not be admissible. So essentially, what they're trying to prevent you from doing, or in this case, trying to prevent you as a prosecutor from doing, is just basically just scrolling through every part of someone's life, trying to find something that might, quote unquote, prejudice the jury, right? Things that are prejudicial or potentially prejudicial are only allowed in if you can show that they directly relate to some part of the case that's being tried. Now, what people often say, and you hear this said a lot, once again, in legal dramas that people may watch on television, oh, it goes to establish the state of mind, right? Now,
the credibility of the witness, I think, the way they put it on
well,
TV.
credibility of the witness is something different. Credibility of the witness is when somebody says something and you can prove what they're saying is not true. When I'm talking about, some people say, why didn't they introduce this into evidence? Very often, it's not allowed to be introduced into evidence.
Right.
Obviously, something that shows that what they're saying is not true is always allowed to be introduced into evidence, or pretty much always allowed to be introduced in evidence if it shows this person is telling untruths. But things that only would help to establish their state of mind, if there's nothing else other than that it does, are very often not actually allowed to be entered into evidence. So something that says or shows that this person, it's just something that's sort of unsavory about the person, but it doesn't directly relate to the actions in the case itself, right? So when someone says, well, this person, does this thing that's not nice or believes this thing that is not nice, right? That's not enough to be, you can't just introduce negative information about the defendant unless it directly relates to the case. And like I said, there's only a certain amount of latitude they'll give you. So people love to ask, well, why wasn't this? Why wasn't that? And once again, I understand everybody went to law school, right? I didn't, but I read. And I obviously grew up in the home of an attorney. My mother went back to law school when I was in fourth grade. And for a while, I was her study buddy. So I used to quiz her on, procedural things and all kinds of other stuff about, Griswold versus state of California, and oh my God, that's how I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer, James. By the time I was 11, I knew I did not want to be a lawyer. Having sat down with actual law books in my hands and read through some of the stuff, I was like, oh my God, how do people do this? But yeah, there are certain restrictions placed, and once again, this is where watching television gets people in trouble. There are a fair number of restrictions put into place about what things you can and cannot introduce into evidence. Obviously, anything that relates directly to the actions or timeline, right? Something that proves or disproves when something took place. Yeah, that's fine. So cell phone records, GPS stuff, yeah, that's stealing. And video, obviously, is once again, but with a few exceptions, because sometimes video isn't always entered in, but usually you can get video in. But yeah, but most of those things.
These people watch video. That's so.
Right.
So video left up to interpretation as to but as you know. I wonder, maybe I have a wrong conception here, because I know that there are a lot of black people in jail right now under what is called the so-called RICO Act.
Yes. Yes.
And and that includes, you may not have sold the drugs directly to the person.
Yep.
But you gave a guy a ride to purchase the drugs.
Right. Right. And also later that guy gave you $20 or whatever it is, right? Something that
right,
shows that you were somehow connected to this racketeering,
right,
what's it called? Influence, racketeering influence, corrupt organization, right? Yes,
right.
that's how they
So
got all those Teamsters back in the day. Yeah,
right. So I have a mother. Well, let's even go back further than this. I have an anonymous donor giving a weapon to a minor.
correct.
Said minor takes weapon across state lines.
Yep,
Why are there
as you
no
pointed
federal
out, loaded takes
charges?
loaded weapons. Yes, that's right.
So I mean, so why are there no federal charges?
Okay, so the federal charges would not have been anything because it wouldn't rise to the level of RICO statutes, right? Unfortunately, there's not not enough moving parts, for that way of putting it, to prove that there's an organization. What you would need is if somehow his employer or his
He's a minor. He doesn't have an employer.
he does. Well, I mean, he works part time, which is why he knows Waukesha, Wisconsin. I don't know why I know all this crap, but that's where he actually worked as a lifeguard, was in Waukesha. So
Okay.
that's his connection to Waukesha. Um, so that's where he spends his summers or spends part of his whatever. But once again, I mean, but I'm saying if you're trying to get to the level of RICO statute, you would need more
Well,
participants.
I'm not even saying Rico. I'm not even saying that
We are talking about conspiracy. They're talking about somebody
but no, what I'm talking about is whether
accessory before the fact.
accessory before the fact,
Okay.
accessory after the fact, because she picked him up and brought him back home,
Yep.
and she took him across state lines.
Yep.
Okay,
I would
so
have.
let's just start there.
Let's start there. So you're asking me personally if I would have gone after that? Yes. If it was up to me, I would have put pressure on, the family and the structure or whatever by bringing charges against everyone I could and try to get somebody to crack. That right? I mean, this is sort
Rico,
of how.
Rico, this is what you do in Rico. You
Right,
bust
right, right, right.
everybody.
That's what you do
You
in Rico,
find
right? Now,
right. You find somebody that want So I mean
and you charge them all. You charge
right,
everybody, right? You
right,
charge the person who empties the waste baskets. You charge the valet parker because they also got paid based on blah blah blah. Right, right. Once again, that's what you do in a Rico.
and I'm speaking in cases of black drug organizations. I'm speaking in like you say, Teamster organizations.
Right, the Steamsters
Anywhere,
unions. Right. I
I
mean, there's
mean,
loads of these. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Giuliani made his name doing this kind
Oh
of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm wondering, like, why was this? Uh, um, what do you want to call it? Why was this weapon, or
Right.
why was
Why were
this
they treated?
never?
Why were they all treated with kit gloves? I think is part of
Right,
what you're asking.
right.
So yeah, there seemed to be a absolute I don't even know what to call it, but there was a bunch of weirdly preferential treatment given to this particular um, defendant. Yes, I mean that much. I think you and I 100% agree.
Yeah.
And I would have, if it had been up to me, there would have been
If he
charges brought against.
if he had been a black guy taking a bag of
Oh yeah, yeah.
heroin from
Oh yeah.
wherever he lived in Illinois
And if his
to
mother had driven him to where he was going to go sell his heroin, yes, right. If this had been Luckile Rittenhouse, yes, it would have been a very different. There'd be no Ricky Schroeder fundraisers for Luckile Rittenhouse. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things that would have been different if this weren't, this minor were not one white and two, as you just said, became a cause célèbre, for certain people in certain political movements. And as you said, now he's being offered a chance at a congressional internship. What makes that so amazing and funny, was sad and funny and ridiculous and American, is if you've ever known how difficult it is to land a congressional internship, then I have known people
Right. Okay.
who
I was talking about that earlier. What about
right,
all that's their life dream. People work for this since they're junior high. Or
correct, right. It's something that if you don't start working towards it around age 12 or so, you're never going to get there. Yes, correct. We are in 100% full and complete agreement about just how ludicrous and just it's just so all of it is so ridiculous. So yes, getting back to what you're asking me, would I personally, if I were one of the prosecutors, would I have charged everybody I could? Yes. I would have charged the person who provided the weapon. I would have charged obviously the mother who provided transportation and any other people who provided any sort of support to him in the carrying out of this act. Once again, in the hopes, to try to shake something loose from one of these many people. I mean, everybody. It's easy to be very loyal to somebody when you're not being charged with anything. Once you've been charged with something, let's see just how loyal you really are. But
as I
yeah, I
said,
would try to drag everybody
Rico.
into it.
As I said, Rico. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's not you're not using the actual statute, but yes,
no,
you're using the
no,
same sort of mindset
right.
of let's put everybody in the tree and shake the tree and see who falls out. Right. And that is the what makes RICO work, right? Is that you pile enough people into the tree, you shake the tree, somebody's grip is going to be a little looser than somebody else's, and somebody's going to fall down. And all you need is that one, and them to name one or two others, right? And now you can shake those two that they named, right? Hey, so and so says you did such and such, and that was, and then you shake that, right? You shake those two, and then somebody's gonna fall out of those two, one out of the two. You only need one of them, right? You only need one, and you keep working your way, working your way, working your way. Now, this is a much smaller case in terms of numbers of people. There's only, and
Right.
obviously his mother's unlikely to, be the person that cracks, but somebody, uncle, whoever or whatever might be the one who does, right? Whoever the other person involved in this might have been the one who's a little shakier. And then once you have that person, whoever it is, who then you know loosens up or you know says some things, whatever. Now you've got a better case. Now this should have been a good enough case. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this case wasn't strong enough. The case should have been plenty strong, but you needed a case that was airtight, bulletproof, and dipped in diamonds for this one to work because you saw from a procedural level how tightly everything was being um, adjudicated for, or against the prosecution and for the defendant. So you couldn't afford to have anything that wasn't tied up completely tightly. And the funny thing is, this is utterly, completely the reverse, as I'm sure you understand all too well, of how cases almost always play out. The state normally has the deck stacked in their favor. And this was an anomaly, right? This is not how, even for white defendants, I promise you, this was an anomaly. The state wins. I mean, if you are a state prosecutor and you're below about 88, 89%, people start wondering what's wrong with you, right? You win almost, and federal, if you're less than 94%, people wonder what the heck's wrong with you. So if you're a state prosecutor and your winning percentage is, less than about 87 and a half, 88, 89, right? If you're in the mid to low 80s, yeah, your boss is wondering what's up, right? Either you need to, maybe I need to watch you, and see what you're doing wrong, or you're not trying the right cases, right? I mean, that's what you learn, right? As a young prosecutor, you learn what cases to just flat out avoid. Oh, you don't want that one. You don't want to bring that one to trial. You want to settle that one, right? That's what you learn.
Of
And
course.
which ones you want to try. You try the ones you're going to win.
Welcome, Dr. Casey. How are you this evening?
How y'all doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I've heard that there's some very bad weather heading your way. How's the weather outside?
It was pretty nice over the weekend, but it is getting cold, so ain't no telling. It is up in the air with Atlanta.
Yeah, Bill, I forgot you're up there in Chicago too, man. How's your weather doing?
It is right now 29 degrees, but
Oh Lord.
clear. No precipitation. No, nothing serious. I mean, this is just normal. Nothing big. No big deal.
Right.
Yeah,
For that
yeah.
area.
For
I
for
do not like
Chicago.
the north. I'm
Yes,
from Ohio, but I cannot stand the cold. After I
hey,
went to the military and got out, my bones be I can't move. I just
I,
stay away in the wintertime.
I'm
Soon
also
fall hit.
I'm also from Ohio, and no, this time of year from now until at least May. If y'all want to come out to California, that's fine. But you know, it, 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 I don't even accept the $39 sales. From Southwest. It's like I'm not going to Chicago for $29, $10.
Right.
Doesn't
Not
matter.
during this time.
Yeah, no, and I have to go to Midway. No, thank you. So, two things: Chicago, Midway, cold with three. But Dr. Casey, we were talking about the Rittenhouse case, of course, and we were all saying that we weren't really surprised at the verdict because of who, what, where, when. But do you think that this kind of implies an open season on protesters? I mean, you know, I kind of look at it this way, and I might be wrong, but these were three white boys protesting for Black Lives Matter, and if you can, I mean, this kind of sent a message. If you support Black Lives Matter, it doesn't matter who, what, where you are. Can
That's
be.
not new though, Mr.
Well, no,
Jones.
no, no. It's not. It's not new, but you know, I kind of thought that since there were Caucasians involved, that there might be some small repercussions.
So I'm an avid reader. Well, audiobook listener.
Okay.
And literally probably about 3 months ago, within the last 3 months, I just finished listening to John Brown, the abolitionist.
There you go.
And if you've listened to that book or read that book, then you would know that this is traditionally what happens when you stand with Black people in general or Indigenous people. And it is justifiable based on the way the laws have been written, especially when you're a white person standing with Black people. That book taught me a lot about everything I need to know, from why Haiti is treated the way it's treated and everything. Like
Oh yes.
it spelled out everything to give me a great understanding.
I
Right.
might
I
have
mean,
to
and a lot of
add
things
that to my library.
even more recently than that. Look at what happened to the members of the Weather Underground. I mean, there's and of course the John Brown Brigade, which was sort of a adjacent organization that had allied itself with the Black Panthers and the Young Lords. And I mean, once again, every 100 or so years, we have these movements, right? So 1865, right? We have the Civil War. And from that, eventually we have the rise of the Klan. But we also have, at least initially, right? Initially, we also have those uh, organizations that are trying to tamp down on that white supremacist, uh, virulent river that sort of courses underneath this far underneath the surface of America's skin. And for about eight, 8 or so years, it was a serious struggle for the soul of America. And then once I got tired, right, about 1876 or so, they were like, well, I think we've done ours. We're going to call it good. You boys play nice with the Black people down south, and we're going to go back to making money and the other stuff we like to do. So when they had the quote unquote corrupt bargain that made Rutherford B. Hayes president, part of the deal was hands off the South, right? in exchange for us letting you be president, Rutherford B. Hayes, you can't do what Ulysses Simpson Grant had done, right? You can't really regulate the South anymore, right? And even Grant towards the end, partially because
let's kind of bring it up to modern day, because I remember Eisenhower, Nixon, Kennedy, of course, and once again, you look at the deals that LBJ made with the South after Kennedy was assassinated. And although we were given the Civil Rights Act and things like that, that was kind of like Lincoln. That was out of necessity. It wasn't because of some great benevolence by the great white father LBJ. No, come on now. Let's be real here. This was quid pro quo.
They definitely only do enough to pacify us enough for us to be quiet and just to hush up and go on, scurry on along now.
Yeah,
go on now.
Yeah, like Juneteenth, little things like that, which kind of irked the hell out of me. But I mean, go ahead.
James, it's so much deeper because when you think about when Christopher Columbus found America, with people living here, they were brown people.
He never made it to America.
Never even got here. Right?
Never got close.
But there were brown people. There were brown people.
The Arawaks,
original American were copper skinned people. So when they came here and found the place, they did what they do everywhere. They went in and they took that shit over. And once they took it over, now we have to blind you to the fact that this is really your shit. Because if you ever rise up, get together and get your minds working, and you come back and take it, you gonna take it from us. So now we got to dummy you down. We can't teach you nothing. We got to tell you everybody was from Africa, because if we look at it now, everybody think that every black person is from Africa. They don't realize that some people were actually from here, that were natives. So they always make it seem like we're all African American, when if you keep that narrative in a person's mind, if you feed them that long enough, it's like if you feed a person religion long enough, if you feed a person stuff long enough that's going to pacify them, then they will become oblivious to the truth. And if you're oblivious to the truth, then you can't enforce anything. You can't change anything. So if we keep you in poverty, if we keep you needing us, if we keep feeding you to make you think that we're really helping you when we're just working the hell out you, then you're going to stay. And I think Americans have Stockholm syndrome. Black Americans with church, with the trust in the government system, all of that. I think it's really Stockholm syndrome. They've done enough to us to where we should be like, okay, at some point, when do we wake up and band together and really, it click?
Bill?
Well, one, for that to happen, you have to realize that that's what's happening, right? As has been said many times in many different ways, you don't know what you don't know. So that's the first thing, right? The first thing is, unless you have had that quote unquote awakening, you don't tend to realize that you've been anesthetized by television and processed foods and religion and a long list of other things that tamp down people's belief in themselves and people's rage and a bunch of other things, right? Everything from things literally in our environment, in our educational system, in our foods, in our entertainment, in our religions. All conditioned, and not just conditioning, but conditioning that one teaches us not to like or trust ourselves, right? So we make sure that Black people don't like or trust other Black people. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah, because when you don't trust or like yourself, you automatically are not going to trust or like people that look like you.
Correct. Right. Well, the two things are inexorably linked, because in order to, unless you have self-hatred that's built into people, you don't have slaves. You have captives, right? They're not slaves. They're captives as long as they don't hate themselves. Once you've gotten them to hate themselves, Now you have slaves, right? Until that point, you have captives. So once you've created slaves, and no one's ever undergone a process of unslave creation, right? There was once they said, okay, y'all are free, right? Everybody go, right? There was no process to unmake them being slaves. There was
I
no
just
process.
heard somebody talk about there was no psychology, no
No,
therapy, no counseling, no nothing after
nothing,
that. Just
nothing. I'm in
go into
fact,
the
But
world.
in
but
fact,
but,
uh,
hold on, Bill. But see, because here's the thing, and you know, I think, and I can only speak for myself, and but I think it's also my generation and what happened to us because I never realized that this was still the state of black people. In my mind, from about the age of 50, you know, things were going good for me, and I could do whatever I wanted to do. Moved out here to California, and for me, life is good. So I never really thought that things had never changed. I'm thinking, well, so my life goes, so everybody's life goes.
huh,
So
when
my
when I
knowledge,
was in the military, at getting out of the military, I was kind of like that, and I think it's being in the military in an environment where everybody at least has to get along on the surface
yep,
level that you
right.
become just oblivious to what's going on outside of that bubble.
well, at one time it was go along to get along, and now I don't have to go along because I got my own.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I'm expecting that well, everybody else has learned that lesson. So you know everything's all right with the world. The wizard has worked his magic, and now I have people like you, Dr. Casey, saying the world hasn't changed that much, and
It
I'm
really
like,
hasn't. It's
what?
unfortunate.
Yeah, that's that's what I'm thinking. Bill, you mentioned it before, the information highway, the technology, all these things have arisen.
Now, my generation is becoming more aware, but it probably won't set into effect until the next generation, to like where my kids' generation are able to be like, okay, so
Right,
we
my
seen what
great
they did.
grandkids.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you have to kind of see what the previous generation did. And right now, we're just now with the internet getting a flood of information where we're able to access all of these things now, where we're able to look up. And for those that have a more forward productive mindset, they'll go research the things that cross their mind. It's the people that don't have the forward thinking mindset that won't research it even though it crossed their mind. Like for me, if something come across my mind, I'm just it could be I one day I Google where did forks come from? Like who was the first person to say, man, if we put these four prongs up here like this is gonna be a good you know what I'm saying? Like we could use like
Well, they didn't have four at first. They just had two initially.
but the mindset, like who was like what was the
Right.
where was that person's mindset at? So I started looking up things like that, and that was probably one of the first things that I researched that made me kind of just kept going like, okay, well, what else can I go look up? And but until people come to that point to where they want to know, it's kind of hard. It's almost like a person in an abusive relationship, whether man or woman, because both of them can be abused, until they are in a situation that allows them to wake up, like to see like, wait a minute, now this ain't getting better, this is gonna keep happening. Like we if we not changing, we not growing. Until they wake up, we could see it all day until we blew in the face, until they didn't get beat, almost killed, everything else. But until they wake up, it'll never be a reality of the bad. So it's kind of like where we are in life right now with the old generation that was pacified with church and religion mostly, to keep them kind of settled down because you're going to obey the laws of the land. You can't do this, you can't do that. With that generation, they're
That's when
stuck.
we were Negroes.
Right. Well, my generation is at the generations is where like, okay, we're gonna do something different because that ain't worked for however many 50, 60, 70 years y'all been doing that, and we still ain't got Where's Jesus? Where's the freedom? Where's all these things that we're praying for that's not happening? But those same people are feeding us or eating off of the same exact words that we're thinking is supposed to save us. And it's an imbalance in that. But until I went and researched the KKK, and all of these other organizations that went and looked at the websites to see what they were talking about, to see where their perspective was, I was really oblivious. But when I looked at it, it gave me a better understanding. But it also made me look at the Bible a little bit different, because it's like, how can you use the same message that black people are using to find a savior and all of this, and y'all using it to kill people as an excuse to do whatever hateful things that y'all want to do? It's no way that that can be possible, and it be sound doctrine.
Well, let's go to the other side of the coin and talk a little bit about the Arbery trial. And I don't. Well, first of all, uh, we don't have the new Black Panther Party, and I've been extending an invitation to them for quite some time, because as uh, I talked about last week, if you bring three black people out there to protest, somebody's going to pick it up and put it on TV. So after talking last week about what happened at the Rittenhour up in Kenosha, we see a whole different perspective being taken down here in Georgia. As we, had uh, what were they called? The NFLA, the no, anyway, the armed black people that are around there now are the same people that went to Lookout Mountain in Georgia with their weapons and marched back. And after the Rittenhour case, it seems now we have a black presence. We are letting people know, hey, I'm not saying, we're not going to take it anymore, but at least there is some kind of demonstration. And I believe that if we had done the same thing in Kenosha, we might have gotten a different verdict. I'm not saying that he would have ever been convicted of murder or anything like that. I'm not saying that. But just like they slapped the cops on the wrist, the 90 days or what, something, whatever. But anyway,
Once he did that little fake crime thing, he wasn't
uh,
never getting convicted.
well,
He
come on, I mean, the
that get
least they
gullible people every time.
the least they could have done was give him something to make his eyes water or something, a handkerchief with onions or something. I mean, I don't know, but anyway, it seems like I said that this judge is now bending over backwards, because one of the things, I think there was one of the things they wanted to dismiss today was because of the intimidation of the people walking around the courthouse. They didn't want them walking around the courthouse, but if they were just in front of the courthouse, that was fine. And
See, but when you know you ain't got no good case, you gotta nitpick. You gotta find something to make the jury kind of feel like, well, maybe we should lean more a little bit, give them a little bit of leeway. They intimidated, and if they're mostly white and they're intimidated by the people walking around outside, if they're fearful, which most white people are fearful, even if we're not doing anything wrong, if they are intimidated by that, then that is going to weigh in on how they make their decision. Even though, like this case down here in Georgia, the prosecution
is
or the
on point.
defense is that
The,
this is crazy, because the things that were said today were just baffling to me.
well, which ones? The part about well, now the one thing that came out today that I really liked, or maybe it was yesterday, was when she was talking about the Super Bowl analogy. Bill, did you hear that? Where she was talking about everybody gets a Super Bowl ring.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
you know, so and then who was it, Bill, whatever his name is, the other guy, well, he was just sitting back in his car making a phone call. He really had nothing to do with it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that I heard from the defense that really, if they had been my lawyer, we would have had to have some words. But that's, anyway, I mean, especially if I'm paying you.
They're not
So
really presenting good arguments. They're just
no, no,
presenting a lot of
And-
distractions.
right, right. It's one of those cases where you throw everything on the wall and hope something sticks.
Hmm.
Plain and simple. So, but Bill, what's your thoughts on the difference between these two cases?
Well, I mean, obviously they are extremely different from each other in a bunch of different ways. So while I think there was never any doubt as to the actual events, right? There was never anyone's doubt. We all the timeline was agreed to essentially by both the prosecution and the defense. What happened, when it happened, where it happened, all pretty much stipulated to by both sides. There was never really much push or pull about any of that. The who, what, when, where, all stipulated to, agreed to. The how, there was some differences between the defense and the prosecution when it came to the how and the why, right? But the other parts of it, the how and the why, yeah, some difference. But everything else was stipulated to and agreed to, and not really even adjudicated. Now, with the Ahmaud Arbery case, we always talk about putting the victim on trial, right? And how supposedly we're trying to move away from that, putting the victim on trial. That was a thing that used to happen all the time. Very often in sexual assault and rape cases, you would see the prosecutors attempt to quote unquote put the victim on trial. And lately, the last few years, they've been sort of instructing them to move slowly but surely away from that kind of thing, for I think more cultural, but even more than legal reasons. This is a case that should be as open and shut cases can be. Uh, while
You just
nothing
can't even
surprises,
be the open and shut part is like it's so like up in the air, Mister Carroll. Like
Well,
you want
well,
you live in Georgia. What's the atmosphere? I mean, are they thinking that these people might get off? I mean, what is it like down there?
I live very far from there, but I think everybody at this point you can't really put your hope too much in the system. Everybody right now is more mad with Joe than they thinking about how this is gonna end because like people are waking up to the leadership and again some of these things just had to happen in order for the wake up to happen. Like some things got to happen in order for things to if we want change and some things got to be shaken up a little bit. So I mean, I'm not sure what people are thinking. I'm not sure what to think because I mean, you just never know what might happen. Even though they've basically admitted to everything, they can still get off. We just seen that.
But Joe has nothing to do with justice.
But Joe speaking out about justice in a way that misrepresents his stance with black people speaks volumes when it comes to presidency and leadership because uh for whatever reason as a community and culture, we think that the president has more say so than he actually does. But the things that he supports, the things that he supports says a lot, though. You know what I'm saying? But I've been saying this for a long time, like since I didn't vote for a president. I didn't vote for Joe. I didn't vote for Trump. You know why? Because you're dealing with two of the same people. Joe might have said that he with black people, but we can see Joe for the last 40 years he been in office. He ain't never supported black people like that. So why would you think that just because he served with Obama that all of a sudden he's a changed man? No, he's a politician. Politicians do whatever they gotta do to do whatever they want to do. And that's what he been doing.
So if we're throwing stones at Joe, are we throwing stones at Carmela too, because I mean,
I ain't like her either. She ain't been good for people like that.
no, she ain't been good for black people either, But I don't know. I mean,
They both some bull crap.
well, it's two sides of the same coin. But I want to think that after these 4 years, that we won't have to deal with either one. You know, and maybe I don't care how they go away, but I just
Well,
want them to go
who's up
away.
next? That's the question.
Well, but see, that's the thing that you and Bill should decide. The problem is that you have people my age making decisions for y'all. At least that's what it seems to be to me. I mean, I see no, I can impart
It's that
with.
respect your elders thing, I think, that keeps people stifled a little bit because you think that the older people must be right, so you don't want to step on their toes, you don't want to disrespect and all of that. And it can sometimes
Have you walked through the projects? When's the last time you seen a young black man escort?
we not talking about in
And,
the projects. We talking about people that's
well,
in a political stance.
no, but I'm talking about people in general. I'm talking about how we treat one another. I mean, you talk about respect for your elders. I mean, hey, have you heard how some of these young people talk to their grandparents at home? And those are the ones that they live with, the people that they're supposedly love. So that respect that you're talking about, that's been gone.
I mean, it depends. For a lot of people, respect comes both ways. So if you got grandparents at home that's disrespecting their grandchildren or whatever, then you may get somebody that's feisty. But a lot of people are a lot more feisty than they were back then. Then they were beat to be obedient. Now people aren't being beat like that. You beat your kid now, you gonna go to jail. So you know the circumstances that and the environment that really shapes people is totally different than back then. That was fear based. A lot of the older people are fear based mentality. A lot of these new generation, they ain't. I mean, they kind of still fear based, but they just ain't trying to be fear based. They don't want to go for it.
So what's the alternative?
We're
What what
gonna see
what
what
what?
happened next as the world turns.
Dr. Casey, I don't know. You might have showed your age there a little bit.
Spent a lot of time with my grandparents.
Okay, all right, okay. All right. I still watch The Young and the Restless. I admit. So anyway, it's so Bill, join us here in this. What about this big separation of the generations? 20 years between me and you at least, but probably only about 10, maybe 15 or so between you and Dr. Casey.
Sure. So we touched on a couple of things in the last few minutes, and I just wanted to sort of recap. Uh, we had opportunities, and by we I mean the U.S. as a whole, to change our campaign financing structure so that everything came from the public. We could have had 100% publicly funded campaigns. And what that would have done is it would have taken away the high ground from the person who's standing on top of the thickest stack of cash. But we didn't do that, right? We didn't do that. And then once Citizens United came along, and once that case wound its way up through, the federal justice system, eventually coming out of the Supreme Court, and had been defeated at lower courts, right? If it doesn't go into the Supreme Court, we never have this amazing sea change in our body politic. Once the Citizens United case established that money, cash, do re mi, right, lettuce, right, dead presidents were First Amendment protected speech, Money is speech. Oh, well, now the game has always been rigged, but at least they were somewhat secretive about it, right? As you said, James, they might have had loaded dice, but they weren't like letting you know they had loaded dice. They weren't letting you know they had a button underneath the table to make it land on whichever when you spun the roulette wheel. Now there was no need to hide the fact that the game is rigged. It's like, oh yeah, oh here the Koch brothers could literally demand that every single person who is planning to run for Senate or presidents, to run for a presidency for the Republican Party, come and meet with them and be vetted in essence, right? They could just literally say that. Come and let us, I guess they don't call it vet you, but, whatever you want to call what the Koch brothers would have at their, what do they call it? There's a name for that, but basically it's just oh God, I used to know the name of that darn political action committee they put super PAC they put together. But essentially, it's the kingmaker. If the Koch brothers say you're all right, you have a chance. If they say you're not all right, you're dead. You got to change parties or work for CNN or whatever it is. But it is now completely. I mean, I guess the only good news is there's transparency. It's now transparent. If they don't say you're okay, you're not okay. If you're running on the Republican ticket nowadays, you've got to have the Koch brothers seal of approval. So we now live in a state where oligarchs oligarchs have always had a huge amount of power and capability to shape, the political process. I mean, at one point we had, Pulitzer saying to F. Scott, was F. Scott Fitzgerald?
Yeah, we have F. Scott.
You go there. I'll provide the war, right? Don't worry. He said, "What are you talking about? Sending me to be a war correspondent? There's no war. No, you go. I'll provide the war." So we live in a world already where money and power almost are the same. But when you now say that money is speech, the person who has the most money speaks loudest. So unless and until, and we talked about this when you had a show previously about trying to get a third party going. Well, unless and until either you get several billionaires to back this third party, or once again, aforementioned campaign finance reform, so that we stop letting money run our politics, it won't matter. One, even if you could get one going, and two, good luck getting one going.
I don't see any difference in the philosophy because we knew back in the day that money ran things then also. The only difference, like you say, is the so-called transparency. And even then, it's not transparent. You still have to look below the layers. But Dr. Casey, how do you make sure or attempt to make sure that, well, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to say this sense of ignorance is not passed down to another generation, since we have not been able to break this chain so far. What is, I mean, are you smashing the chain? Are you pulling the chain apart? How are you attacking the weakness of this chain?
In 2010, when I first started Speaking Freedom, the original Speaking Freedom sign logo was a broken chain where the bottom was broken because it was like chains breaking off. And
Wow,
personally, for
I
me,
never saw that. Okay.
personally, for me, it is more about passing information. So what I do is Speaking Freedom TV. I talk about everything, from politics to sex and relationships and all of those things, self growth and purpose. And I write the books. And a lot of the things that I do online with Speaking Freedom TV is free because a lot of people can't get information because everybody want to sell you information.
Hmm.
And selling information is not going to grow us the way we need to grow because everybody can't afford to buy the information. But if you give information away, the right information, then you will help facilitate the knowledge of people. Right now, the only education that people got is based in the school system, and then half of us is failing that shit. So I mean, like we're at a crossroads where we need somebody that's going to be willing to educate, educate in a way that's not preachy, educate in a way that's not condemning or self-righteous, educate in a way that's not belittling or problematic, or it's a lot going on. And then you got a lot of people that don't know how to deal with their emotions, so we need to teach emotional intelligence. We need to teach a lot of things to prepare people for where we need to be or where we should be. But that also comes with counseling. That also comes with like life coaching and other skill sets that help prepare people and bring people to knowledge so they're not ignorant. Lack of knowledge is our biggest downfall. That's the one of the best things that the Bible could have ever told you. And people still don't want to know nothing. So it is getting people the knowledge and information the best way each person that really knows something can, without it always being a fee attached to it.
Um, Brother Williams, welcome tonight. And
Right.
I want to say that Dr. Casey has just went across and broken every street rule that there is. Because as you know, the game is to be sold, not told.
Right.
you you know, I'm giving away all this information for free, and I got no profit coming back. Nah, come on now, buddy. You got to do better than that. So
I
how do
mean,
we? So no, I'm just I'm just
right.
kind of speaking in parables here. I mean, but I mean this. Uh, Brother Williams, do you understand where I'm coming from here? And when you're trying to get this point across, and you're starting with people like me, my age, where we come from that, by your bootstraps, and if you can't make it, take it. So yeah, I mean, whole different type of scenario here. How do we bridge these gaps?
Well, I want to kind of back up a little bit, and I do want to say I like to make at today's panel. You got Bill and Dr. Casey on, so you got a powerhouse today. Hey, Casey, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm gonna quote from the Bible too. We got to build on this because the Bible. There's a passage in the Bible that also states that the servant is never greater than the master. And as
Hmm.
black people, as long as we continue to operate as servants, then we can never be the master of ourselves. And so we have to recognize that because right now in today's time, we still continue to perpetuate the idea and the mindset that we are victims to the degree that we basically hold our victimization up with a badge of honor. And to a big degree of us, we just soak in that. And what that causes us to do is to not rise up. It causes us to just basically accept the fact that things are going to always be the way they are, status quo. And then from that standpoint, we continue to just perpetuate through our emotional reactionary responses, anger, frustration, but not ever being in the right mindset to develop solutions because we're stuck in this victimization. So, kind of going back to what you said, how do we come up out of that? Uh, to me, the answer is always going to be define, develop, defend in terms of what we talk about in the Black Panther Party and waking our people up. Our people have to recognize the power that we do hold, provided that we come up out of the trauma that we continue to allow ourselves to rest on and expect that to change. The conditions won't change until we actively change. And like what I just said, based on that passage, you can't expect your oppressor to change his ways. This is what the oppressor is. Whether we talking about it from the standpoint of European bloodline, or we talk about it from the aspect of the way capitalism is operated here within the United States. the bottom line is black people are viewed as being the consumers and the laboring body, the lower end of the laboring body. And so we are the most expendable ones because we put ourselves in that position by continuing to keep ourselves in that condition. And so we have to be willing to fight and overcome that. And going back to like your generation, brother James, anytime we make strides and we fight, we can't celebrate and feel like that we can go back, that we've made progress, and now we can kind of go let up some. The point is when you make any significant amount of progress, you got to push through and you got to continue. You can't ever let up because they're not letting up. The system is not letting up. And I would say things actually will get worse before they get better because you end up with that. If we get to that day, we end up with the Alamo effect. And so, from that standpoint, we have to just get more people involved, more people active, more about people conscious of the fact that we have to hold ourselves accountable. And therefore, we have to do more than just simply only be concerned with our immediate family and base everything that we do for our children on them just doing for their children and get out of that little bubble net of idealism that we call a family, when in essence our family it should be a village, should be a community, because we have a lot of repairing that needs to be done to have an actual intact community so that we can actually draw from that perspective. Because right now, black folks are just operating off individualism.
Bill, this kind of goes against everything that you learn in an elite military force.
Right.
And when you get out, and Dr. Casey, I don't know where you served, but just the fact that you served means that at one time you were also a part of that particular force, whether it was good or bad. But it does instill with you in a certain uh, mindset. Uh, First of all, survival. That's number one. Okay. Then, well, first of all, you think of the unit because that's the most important thing. You belong to the unit. You are a part of a unit. So you celebrate that. Then the second thing you celebrate are your individual skills. You're rewarded for those. You're given promotion for those individual skills. Bill, you might have been a little bit different since you were part of the officer cadre, but I'm still thinking that the mindset of the survival skills of taking care of oneself and those that as Brother Williams was saying, that immediate family, that unit. Why weren't we able to bring those same skills to our neighborhoods and exploit those skills? I mean, those are resources. Why have we kept them hidden? Is it because in some well, in some cases you weren't those radical ideas weren't accepted that now are accepted, or have as grandma would say, have we grown too big for our britches?
I think that's an exceptionally good question. And I would say that some people did take those skills and did take things they learned. And, from Geronimo to Jaja Pratt to a long list of others. Hell, Medgar Evers. I mean, it's a long list of people that took lessons they learned in their military career and used them either directly or indirectly to get involved in trying to move black people forward. Now, the issue, or it's not the issue, there are a list of issues, but amongst the issues is that when you are trying to do anything with, for, or around black people, we talked earlier about this enormous mountain of self-hatred, right? there's so many different things we're fighting against, but the one universal enormous millstone around every single movement. I don't care if you're talking about a violent movement, a nonviolent movement, a mixed movement, a religious-based movement, a politically-based movement, an economic-based movement. None of them has effectively yet managed to, first of all, though that many have tried, to remove that enormous millstone of self-hatred, right? That's the first thing. Black people don't tend to like or trust each other. We talked about that because, as the doctor pointed out, we don't tend to like or trust ourselves. So you have that first thing that you're trying to overcome, right? Before all that long list of other things that you've got to try to overcome, there's that, right? There's that. That's your first thing you got to do is, how do I get these people who don't like or trust each other to like, trust each other, and perhaps even lay down their lives for each other? Because we talked about, once again, what you do when you're putting a unit together. And there's a whole class, a block of instruction, I guess is the term that's used, that when you go through officer basic camp, that's spent on instilling esprit de corps, right? That's built on building unit cohesion. That's built on taking a bunch of people who didn't know each other from a can of paint a few weeks ago and getting them to get to the point where they would literally die for each other, right? That is something that, if the Army is not good for anything else, and other branches as well, isn't good for anything else, it's really good at teaching you what truly motivates people, right? You get to really see how motivation actually works. And, when it fails to work as well, but it's a great laboratory. If nothing else, the military is an excellent laboratory for understanding human motivation, right? And seeing it actually play out in real time. There's really no other, we have lots of psychology and psychiatry and lots of other things where they try to explore these things, but because they can't, do live fire exercises and they can't, actually have a war, they don't get to see how these things actually play out when you truly put people in life or death situations. A person who's 19 years old, and I've seen this with my own eyes because this was someone that was in my unit, a 19-year-old cut off from command communications suddenly uses their own training, motivation, and initiative to do something that saves probably the lives of another dozen or 2 dozen soldiers, with no one telling them what to do, right? They got cut off. They're officially lost, but they use their own training, skills, and motivation to figure out something that ends up, like I said, in the case of this situation, I'm thinking I'd probably save at least a dozen, maybe 2 dozen lives. We have enormous resources as Black people in America. We don't think of it that way, unfortunately, but we do. We have way more financial resources than we actually realize that we have, but we don't tend to know how to use them because our financial literacy level is even lower than our literacy level. And that's unfortunately fairly low as a people. Our knowledge of each other, right? We talked about, it's hard to, you would think, we feel like we know each other, but we don't, because we think, as you said yourself, James, I thought we were doing okay. When you said in whatever year it was, when you're starting to get your life together, I guess about the mid-90s, it's like, hey, Black people must be doing okay because I'm doing okay, right? That's sort of the barometer we use. Hey, my ass isn't getting kicked. I guess everyone's ass is okay too. Hey, well, my ass is healing nicely. I guess things are okay. We unfortunately don't have, even with all the things that we have to communicate with each other, we don't have a really great way of, one, honestly assessing how Black America is doing as a whole, right? We see stuff, oh, Jay-Z's a billionaire. Oh, well, hey, Barack Obama's president. Oh, well, things must be okay. But we all know that could not be further from the truth. And American exceptionalism, the myth / machinery that surrounds American exceptionalism, one is it teaches us these amazing things that are not true, right? We talked about this. Christopher Columbus, right? Almost everything people know about Columbus is actually completely wrong, including his name wasn't Christopher Columbus, but that's for a whole other show. Oh my God, the stuff I could tell you about him. But so much of what we think we know about the quote unquote founding fathers, wildly untrue, right? Vast majority of it is it's like a little bit of truth and then a bunch of myth making surrounding it.
White lies.
Oh yes, the whitest of lies, pure, uncut, unstepped on, 99.999%. So add that to the fact that black people know so little about, well, I mean, ourselves, right? Even those who know stuff about ourselves still haven't learned to really, really, really like ourselves for the most part, right? I mean, it's a struggle, right? It's a struggle every day saying to get up every morning and say, I'm gonna love myself and I'm gonna love black people, right? I mean, it's work, right, Brother Williams? Like it's work because there's days when you feel like, man, this love myself and love black people thing is exhausting. Oh my God, I'd like a break. Can I just take a 2-week vacation and not have to love black people? Because it's work. It is actual work. But
I say I love people, black people, and then the first people I see are Tim Scott and Larry Elder. So,
well, that's the challenge, right? The challenge is to say I'm not going to turn my back on them either. Now I'm going to correct them, right? Because if my daughter went astray, I would correct her. I wouldn't turn my back on her and say, well, you're no longer my daughter. So I can't say to Tim Scott, Larry Elder, and long list of others, Ben Carson. I mean, you can go on forever. I can't say to them, I can't say to Candace Owens, you are no longer part of us, right? As convenient and fun as it might be to put them on an ice floe and set them, in the Atlantic or whatever, that's not how we work, right? If you're saying I'm a collective and I'm working towards collective freedom, think of what a win it would be if I was able to fix Larry Elder, if I'm able to bring back Candace Owens into the flock. Would it be hard? Oh, woo! But if you're saying we're going to save black people, then you save the ones that are hardest to save also, right? Or else you're not really talking about saving black people. You're just talking about saving the black people you like, which is what those people, that's what Larry Elder and Candace Owens are also saying, right? Yeah. They're not saying we're going to save black people, they want to save black people we like. Now, for them, it's a much shorter list, right? They only have to save a handful. I got to save all of us, right? Or try to. So it is difficult to move collectively, right? When you don't have a central command structure. That's what the Army does and other branches of the Army have for them, right? There's an established hierarchy. You are a fire team leader. You take your orders from so-and-so. You're on this fire team. You take your orders from your fire team leader. You're a squad leader. You give commands to the fire team leader. You take commands from your platoon leader or from your platoon sergeant or whatever, right? It goes blah, 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 blah. And everybody knows who they have to answer to. When you're saying, as someone in the Black Panther Party, you're saying to someone as the Republic of New Africa, you're saying someone, when you're in the old Black Panther Party or in SNCC or in CORE or in the UNIA or 1,000 different movements we've had, the Niagara movement, you're trying to persuade black people, right? There's no immediate command structure for people to fall into, right? The Nation of Islam sort of tried to, they borrowed some things from clearly from the military. And at points were sort of trying to move in that direction and how they built some of their command structures. And then, it all fell apart for reasons that we don't have time to get into in this show. But until you have some central organizing something, right? A core that everyone says this is something we all go by, right? Every movement has tried and failed so far, this may hopefully change, to say this is our central organizing element and everybody believes in it, right? The Black Panther Party had some people who were very committed Marxist-Leninists, and they had some people who were like, I don't know if capitalism is really that bad, right? Even within their own movement, right? They had people who were like, I'm this and I'm that, and I kind of like that. I'm not so much about that, right? There's like you don't have to be unanimous on everything, right? But you got to be unanimous on at least one thing. You got to have one thing you can all agree to. And when's the last time we got every black person to agree to at least one thing? I'm still waiting for that day. Yeah. So good luck, Brother Williams.
Well put. I like how you tossed that ball there. I do want to say this. One thing you got to keep in mind also in regards to that military, I look at that as within another trifecta. The three things I think come together that aids that in being able to be as good is the bloodlust, the patriotism, and the paycheck. You got that going on. Whereas within our movements, what you don't have is you don't have the patriotism because again we're not able to unify into one thing just from that standpoint. Damn sure don't have a paycheck coming, and the bloodlust would be identified as what was referred to as black identity extremism. So actually, all three things work against us in terms of what can work in the military. Now, the
Right.
training that you're talking about is completely A1. In fact, that even goes back to another thing you said as to why I refer to myself as Brother War. War meaning the biggest fight that anybody will have, I think, is with themselves. That's
Yep.
actually why I refer to that. And that's what I teach people is that we have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror. And I refer to us as looking at ourselves in the mirror naked, not necessarily physical, but when most people look at
Right.
themselves in the mirror, they start off finding something wrong or looking for something wrong.
Right.
And from that standpoint, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you're already, your mindset is already geared toward finding something wrong, what do you think is happening on a mental
You're
level
gonna
and a
find it.
spiritual level? Yeah. And you use
Tear
that to
yourself
tear
apart.
yourself down. Yep. You use it to tear yourself down. And as long as I can continually tear myself down, how can I also, in the same token, build with someone else? Because then what starts happening is envy, greed,
Yep.
jealousy,
Yep.
some of those other factors that cause me to turn myself down comes into play. And so we're dealing with a people that are basically living through a dysfunctional lifestyle. And so kind of going back to what
Comfortable in survival mode too.
survival mode, and that's exactly what I was getting ready to get into. And the James, you hear me say it all the time, that where we're stuck in coping and using what's referred to as a coping mechanism within the Panther Party versus solution based. And let me run those down real quick, going back to what Bill was talking about in terms of a structure. Within the Panther Party, this generation, we have what we refer to as our mechanism structure, which covers your infrastructure, your defense, your community, your economics or resources, engineering, and then we also have the coping mechanism, which basically we utilize that to say that if all else fails, what does black people do? They go back to the coping mechanism. So the idea is to move away from that one and start working within the mechanism structures that work. And within each one of those mechanisms, there are leadership positions that are held accountable for those mechanisms. So I would like to say that for the most part, there are answers within our community, like you said, and to where we have everything that we need to do. The problem is we continue to put one thing over the other, and we continue to fight in terms of even within our own structures, which thing needs to happen now, which thing takes priority, instead of being able to allocate people and allocate a unison approach to being able to tackle the various things across the board. We fight amongst ourselves in terms of how to go about doing this and getting to a certain point of victory and being able to use that to harness the power to go to the next goal line or the next target in the next victory. So our ability to mass organize is not where it should be. Now, mind you, we have modern day versions of COINTELPRO and all types of things that continue to fight against us to keep us from being able to be all on one accord. Like when Bill talked about Geronimo Pratt. Now, we did a segment on our YouTube channel a few weeks ago that just aired where we had a brother named Odinga who talked about how in the Dallas chapter of the Black Panther Party in the early 70s, over half of the membership was on some type of government payroll.
Yep.
And when Geronimo Pratt went down to Dallas to hide out, he instantly walked into a trap. So it was in Dallas, Texas, my home city, is where he got arrested
Yep.
and extradited back back to California. So I mean, there is so much that is being worked against us that we have to be able to realize, and I say this all the time, James, know that we're on the battlefield. Going back to what Bill is talking about, we have to first identify with the fact that we are at war. When we recognize that we are at war as a people, then we need to start thinking like we're at war. And therefore, now it puts us in a position to where that patriotism or that unification that we need to have and that trust that we need to have to be able to do something it may come out of a necessity, but at least it comes and is on the table as a realization that look, we're bagged into the corner. Either we come together for the sake of our survival, or we see that we're going to be exterminated. So when we look at things from that position, and we look at things from the reality of what it is, as it applies to us as a collective, then there is the right ingredients for us to recognize that a bond must happen in terms of us trusting each other and getting our act together to be able to come up with some type of way to work collectively across the board to fight for our freedom and our independence in terms of our mental, physical, and spiritual.
But Dr. Casey, my
I got a lot to
generation.
say. I got a lot to say. I got a lot to say.
Well, hey,
So
I'm gonna turn it over to you because it seems to me that my generation thought, when Obama was elected, that a ceasefire had been declared.
a lot of people did. A lot of people act like that, even if they knew it wasn't the reality. So, one of the things that I want to say is that everybody mentioned money and power as a they go together. And when Mr. Williams came in, you were talking about having to pay for it. The biggest downfall in the black community is that we seek money more than we seek community. And as long as you put money first, you're no different than the system that we're trying to compete against, which is why you have people that are being able to be purchased. Their alliance is purchased. So even when they act like they with you, they not with you, but that's across the board. So that contributes to the distrust amongst our people. One. And then the need to compete. Everybody's trying to do the same damn thing. We all got different talents. Even the people that got the same talents can do them different ways. Like I'm not gonna reach every life coach client that is in the world. But if somebody doesn't like me, that doesn't mean like that they are exactly like me. So if everybody stop trying to be like each other and everybody do their gift, their purpose in their lane, then you will create a community without having to establish the fact that we're creating a community because you're doing what you do well. And if you do what you do well, then I'm not stepping on your toes because you're doing what you do. And if I'm doing what I do, then I'm not worried about who's stepping on my toes because I'm confident in being myself and doing what I'm supposed to do. A
Keyword
lot of
was
the
confident.
problem is waking people up to who they are, what they like, what they prefer, what they purpose feel like their purpose is, what their gift is. A lot of people are just doing what they were told to do, and as long as they continue to do what they were told to do, they were get no further than the people that told them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
How far were the people that told you to do those things? Most of them were not successful. They were not self-confident. They were not none of these things. And now if you include with my generation all these body changes and cosmetic surgeries, which kind of took place before with Botox and all of that, but it's just a repetitive self-hate that is hard for a lot of people to come out of. And then a lot of it, the last thing is what I put in the chat. The scripture that you mentioned, people consider that as long suffering. They think long suffering is good. They think suffering is good because Jesus suffered, so I gotta suffer. And as long as we suffering, then we doing good. And that is the biggest problem because you're rejoicing, praising the suffering more than what comes after what's supposed to come after the suffering. But we've been suffering for the last
but you
400 years. The
but you
suffering
have
has
to
not stopped, but people have
you have to
definitely become lax.
die. You have to die in order to gain your reward. What kind of is
That
that?
contributes to the problem also. So people start denying themselves. They stop liking what they know that they like internally because if I deny myself, then I'm more right with God. No. Deny the bull crap. Deny the bad portions of yourself. Fix yourself, work on yourself, love yourself, heal yourself. All of those things will contribute most to the community, more than to the community than anything financially could do. I don't care how much money you get. If you don't love yourself, that money ain't gonna do nothing for you. You still be suicidal. You'll still be ready to jump off a bridge. You'll still ready to be promiscuous. You'll still be ready to spend money on stupid stuff that you don't even need to impress people that don't even like you if you didn't have it. So it is a lot of self-worth things going on in the community. I actually I talk about all these things. It's a part of the spiritual human behavior process. This coping mechanisms is defense mechanisms. I call it band-aid effect
Yep.
because you're putting band-aids on the things that you don't want to deal with, and instead of finding solutions, you're just going to put a band-aid on there. And guess what you do when you leave a band-aid on too long? It get infected, it get nasty, and do not heal because it needs the air and the ventilation in order to heal. It's like if you don't deal with things, you don't reveal things, you can't heal from things. And a lot of people don't want to even face themselves. COVID was hard for a lot of people because they don't know how to sit their ass at home. They don't know how to be in their own presence, be comfortable in their own thoughts without liquor, without weed, without all these other things. That's a distraction. Without work, that's a
You were
distraction. Church,
deployed.
that's a distraction.
You were deployed. No different. You were deployed. Just think. I mean, that's how I took it. I mean, hey, I
People,
didn't.
but civilians can't function like that. And then with the military part, it's just a matter of um being strategic for the people that have been in the military and know those, the methods. You gotta kind of gotta be strategic to make sure you don't get killed trying to help.
But and I've also been guilty of all those things that you mentioned. Like the flash and all of that. I mean, part of my generation. The big
It's
cars.
stages. You go
You
through
know,
stages.
right. So I guess what I'm asking is, like, have we reached that stage where we can really make a change rather than continuing the same rhetoric?
It,
I would
it's gonna
let
take
me
for a
let me
lot more
jump in
people to
on
get
that.
more money.
I,
Money is
w-
a
I was
distraction.
and I would say that we things haven't actually got bad enough. Unfortunately, I don't think things have gotten bad enough for us to come to that level of grips. And I would say this just real quick, and not to digress, but
brother
even going,
Williams,
go ahead.
brother Williams, we're hanging from trees. I mean, how much badder does it have to get? People are shooting. People, the police are shooting us down in the street
They've been
more
doing
than
that.
they, more than they did in 1968.
Well, I don't. I think we're more aware of it than we were in
Yeah.
Yeah,
1968.
A lot of
I don't think
things
the
we
numbers
are more
bear out
aware
that it's
of.
worse.
I
A
agree.
lot of things that people act like are just so bad now. It's not that it's worse. We're just aware of it. It's on the forefront. We can see it
Right.
now.
I promise you, 1950 was way worse
Way
than now.
worse.
I promise you.
Way
well,
worse.
I was born in '47, so I don't know about 50, but I can tell you about from about 57 on. Okay, I still remember my great grandmother talking about things down in Alabama, and the other people coming up from Mississippi to get jobs in the mill, and sending money back so that the family can come up. So I mean,
Well,
you talk about things getting worse. Uh, cotton,
well,
I mean,
well.
cotton
Let me say
from the
this, James.
cotton mill to the steel mill. What was
Let me
hell was the
let,
difference?
let me say this, James. Keep in mind that basically what we dealt with from then to now is a simulation. We had at one point in time through segregation, we had to do for self.
Yep.
We could not go outside of our community. So
Right.
therefore,
Mhm.
everything that we had within our communities to make it thrive and make it survive,
Mhm.
we did that. So we were more intact as a collective. So therefore, we prospered better under the conditions of working together through that, what is a forced situation or not, than we do now, because now what happened through assimilation, we became individuals. That's why I
Mhm.
said that we became individuals, and that goes back to what Dr. Casey was saying about money. We pursue things from an individual standpoint, not a collective standpoint that that is about building up a community. And like I was going to say, not to digress, but one thing I do want to say that y'all need, I want to listen to audience to be aware of in the Bible, when you talked about the whole aspect of suffering and dealing with the afterlife. Remember now, the sacred societies teach that same thing, but what they teach is that you must die and be born again, which is in essence a rites of passage, which is what we taught our people as well. And so, yeah, it goes back to a good book I like. I want to throw out there called "From Niggas to Gods." The niggas must die off so that the gods and so that the men can grow up and the women can live. In other words, it has to be a process that we go through so that we remove ourselves from a condition. So yeah, things are better in the afterlife, but the afterlife is not the afterlife that people have misconstrued in certain forms of religion.
Right.
But yes,
you're talking about an awakening.
An awakening.
The rebirth is an awakening.
Correct. Correct. But that's really what it's about.
Right.
It has been taken to be a physical manifestation, which is the mess that people buy into.
The whole concept of Christ is supposed to be an awakening into a consciousness of awareness of what's going on. And the misconception that is, I don't even know where they get this idea from of what they have of Jesus. But
well, I can tell you. Do we have time to get into the Council of Nicaea? We have time for that.
I don't think that's.
I mean, it's really deep though, James. It's not. You cannot talk politics and not hit the topics that created the political system the way it is. It didn't just come from England and the UK. It stems way far back. Even the religion, even Christianity, it stems so far, and it's so much trickery and white lies in the way that it's been delivered now to where it muddies the water of the original context of it. The spirit of God is real. The things that you see in church are real, but when you're using that energy, you build up the energy, you get all that energy, and you use it towards some bullshit. And guess what you're gonna get? Nothing.
Right.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing.
There you go. We
one of the things that I was kind of blessed to do, if you want to call it that, but when I went to jail, I considered it the university because I had time to sit down and study. I had time to sit down and read books. I had time to go over there and look at talk to the old heads and find out how not to make the same mistakes that I made. So when I was a criminal for real. I mean, it was all about knowledge. It was about how to make sure that even though I was doing something that may have been 25 to life, I knew how to get a lawyer to where I can get 5 years. I did 5 years 3 times. No problem. Didn't make no difference to me. Like I said, put a few kids through college. But that was the mentality. As long as I was maintaining that persona, that's all that was necessary for me. Because I guess, well, no, I did. I mean, that my reputation meant more to me than what, no, I'll put it like this. Money meant more to me, and my reputation meant more to me than my actual influence upon my community.
Right. And if you're Jesse Jackson Jr., those same things are true, but he doesn't go out, and it's not ski mask time for him. But he's still.
That was the only difference between me and him.
Right, exactly. He's still out there robbing. He's just not doing it the same kind of way. And of course, like you, eventually he ended up putting some lawyers' kids through college too. The thing that we keep running into, and we're all running it, and like I said, at some point we have to have a show where we talk about the whitening of Christianity, because
please,
because I mean, if you read,
y'all give me a date. Y'all tell me when you want to do it. I'm down.
We can do a whole little series, a whole month about Christianity.
Right? We'd have to. We should start it in the new year because I got I think all of us here have done some deep reading into what Christianity was going to be before the powers that be stepped in and said, "Nope, you can't have this in the Bible. This has got to
Yep.
go. This has got to go." Right? Oh well, the Gnostic Gospels. You got to get out of here. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Gospel of Jude the Obscure. You got to go. Gospel of Thomas. You got to go. What? Judas? No. I mean, how many people know the root of Judas's name, like his last name, not the first name?
Iscariot.
Yeah, right. What's the root word? What's the root word?
I will be one of those that didn't know. I'm not going to pretend. So,
Does anybody know the root word of the name Iscariot?
I don't.
Okay, so if anyone here has seen the movie Sicario, right? The word Sicario in Spanish comes from the Latin word Sicarii, right? Which was actually originally a Hebrew word that was then Romanized or Latinized. And a Sicarii is a dagger about that long. It's about the shortest deadly weapon ever devised, or one of the shortest. And it's got a sharp curve to it because it's meant to go around the armor of a Roman centurion, and you dip it in garlic oil and you put it into their kidneys, right? And then in about an hour, they're dead. You only gave this to people, one, that were courageous as hell because you're about to stab a Roman centurion from about 4 inches away.
Yeah.
And you only gave it to people you really trusted. So Iscariot meant a member of the Sicarii, right? A person who carries that little teeny dagger with that sharp curve that you dip in garlic oil. Do you imagine the kind of guts it takes to do that? Roman centurion didn't travel by themselves. I mean, you might occasionally catch one slipping, but usually they were in packs. And they are basically, little mini tanks. I mean, they're got their gladius. They've got at least 2 edged weapons on them, sometimes a spear, right? And they're just armor. Except for that little gap. That's why the Sicarii had that sharp curve to it, because there's this one little sort of, to allow you to bend, there's this little sort of hinged part of it right over, well, I guess you can sort of see, over here, and you can slip that little dagger in. If you read the Gospel of Judas, it helps you to understand so many things that have been mistold, right, about the last days of Christ and a whole bunch of other stuff. But, I mean, first of all, like, there are people who stare at you funny and you say, Christ wasn't a Christian, right? And they look at you like, huh? Right? No, I can prove it, right? At no point does he ever say, I believe in worshiping me, right? Right? At no point does he say that.
He actually told them not to worship him,
Exactly.
specifically.
Exactly. Right? Christ wasn't a Christian, right? And people just look at you. And of course, his name wasn't Jesus either. I mean, that's what the Romans called it, but nobody liked him. None of his friends, none of his family called him that. But this is a whole show. I'm sorry. But yes, we have to have this show at some point, because so much of the disempowerment that happens to people through being Christianized is because of the version of Christianity they're getting. There's a whole other version of Christianity that got suppressed.
Dr. Casey.
Yes.
Anything you care to comment on or expound upon? Like I said, I have no qualms about sharing anything about myself, and hey, it kind of makes me think that I've been a tortoise for the last 20 years and just stuck my head back in, and as like I said, as long as my house was safe, then all the other little turtles are safe too.
That's the way you've been conditioned to think. That is, you're doing what they want you to. That is exactly what they want, for you to not be concerned with the village and then only seek, because it has to be a level of individuality within the community. You can still be an individual in the bigger picture, in the community, and a lot of people don't know that you can I can still like what I like. I can still be who I am and still be a part of the bigger picture
Yep.
and be cohesive.
But that also means that I have to be able to come out of my shell and accept some of those other people in the community. I might not like those other people in the community. I mean, that perhaps their shell is bigger than mine. Perhaps their family is bigger than mine.
But that means that it's something in you that you don't like. So when you see them, it makes you be like, I don't like them. Because
That's
it's
called
something in you that you can look in the mirror and say, you know what, I don't like that
that's
about
called
myself. So,
envy.
and I might see that in another person. So now I don't like them because they got something that I can't obtain. And it really isn't nothing financially or physically. It's something inwardly.
And James, that's actually not a tortoise; it's a snapping turtle. The one that the one that has a big head and will snap at anything that's in front of it, but then pull itself back in its shell. Okay.
I have to agree. you know, it's like the flag. Don't tread on me. Come close at your own expense. But yeah, I mean, we tend when we amass things, we tend to get territorial, and and that does not necessarily always mean material wealth. That can also mean knowledge.
It
See,
can mean,
but
yeah.
when I said something about giving away knowledge, the first mindset is, oh, we can't give away nothing. But I literally faced a lot of backlash when I started giving people, like, just telling
Yep.
people just things that people need to know because
Right.
somebody wants to make the money and profit off of what I'm telling them. And if I tell
Mhm.
them for free, then they losing their profit because they can just come
That's
to me.
right. That's right. Hey, how you gonna take away my moneymaker? What's wrong with you? Come on.
Yeah.
But
you
the sad part is that we are profiting off of somebody else's ignorance. That if they were not
Right.
ignorant, we could be better as a people, as a whole. So you
Yep.
would take your individual selfish profit over the whole being better. Because if the whole is better, then the world becomes better. But as long as I am preying on somebody else's ignorance, somebody else's weaknesses, somebody else's downfalls, then the world will continue to be what it is. It's all a whole bunch of mini politicians running around trying to tell you what you want to hear to get your money.
And I liken that to what's going on within the music industry, which continues to perpetuate and feed, the younger generation. Because keep in mind, the music industry, especially as it applies to rap music, they capitalize off of our trauma and off of our self destruction. And then as an artist, when an artist thinks that they need to make it in order to break through the threshold and start making money, what do? They vocalize what they went through, or they vocalize what they've seen somebody go through, and so it's like that, discussing that pain, discussing that drama,
It's
discussing
not
those
just
bad
that though. They're
conditions.
not allowed to grow. The gatekeepers will not let
Yep,
them grow.
that's
Like
true.
people like me trying to enter the music industry. I'm not a lesbian. I've never been with a girl. I might let you fantasize and let you think that I'm going to be into you. But I normally do that so that I know how far to go with you, how close I need to get. And because I'm not those things and I'm not really open to a lot of things, they will never let somebody, I don't care how talented I am, I don't care how many words of mine rhyme just off the top of my mind without me trying, they still will not let me in because guess what? I'm not willing to compromise. And if they get you to compromise and they can hold something over your head
Yep,
so that you
yep,
won't get out of pocket, because if you get out of pocket, guess what? We dwindling this thing. So
yep,
for me,
yep,
like I tell a lot of my business, not because I'm telling my business to put my business out there, but can't nobody hold nothing over my head. Can't nobody, you know what I'm saying? There's no
Right.
price for me because what are you gonna use to get me? And but that would leave me outside of the industry, outside
right,
of a lot of industries because
right.
they can't purchase me. I can't. I probably be the worst politician ever because they can't get in my pocket. If they can
Yeah,
put
your
some
soul
money
not
in
for
my
sale.
pocket, then I'm gonna go somewhere. If I go along with to get along with whatever they're talking about, then I'll be successful. But if I don't, you'll see me here.
Right, because
Well,
your soul is
the
not.
one good thing about social media is that it's revolutionized the music industry
Yeah.
and other industries as well, but particularly the music industry. I can name without thinking hard 12 or 13, maybe more than that, people who've broken themselves. They didn't have to wait for somebody to discover them because they took to YouTube, they took to TikTok, they took to Twitter, they took to whatever, and just put their stuff out there. And they were able to, like Cupcake, right? However you feel about Cupcake, the industry didn't make Cupcake. Cupcake made Cupcake, right? She did it all herself from bottom to where she is now because she understood social media, she understood marketing, she did it all. Now, I'm not wild about some of her messaging, but it's all her. Nobody had to tell her, here, do this, do that, sign this, sign that. She has distribution deals, but nobody owns her. She owns all her own stuff. She allows people to distribute her stuff, right? But and more people are finally following that model. There's more and more artists in the music industry who are now, they are their own thing and they work with more established industries to distribute, to do this, to do that, but they're no longer signing with the record company. And record companies are smaller, right? We've lost a bunch of record companies because they couldn't survive in the new paradigm. And the ones that have survived, they are no longer making artists the way they used to. They're not finding you in the dime store, in the whatever. They're not sending out 500 different A&R reps like they used to in the old days.
A&R is almost extinct.
Almost extinct, correct. Yeah. Because now you're walking in the door saying, I've got, right, because now an artist walks in the door and says, I've got 300,000 Twitter followers. I've got 180,000 subscribers on YouTube. I've got so many downloads on DatPiff and SoundCloud and whatever. Here's what we're going to do, right? So the power dynamic has changed. So that's the one good thing I'll say. So if your stuff is hot and you're dropping it out on SoundCloud, on YouTube, on whatever it is, you can build your own audience and you can take your music direct to your audience.
But then once again, we talk about the individual achievements and how many or how few of these people are passing it down to the community. Just like I said, once we get to that particular level, we become, as you said, Brother Williams, snapping turtles. This is mine.
Right. Right. And, as El Haj Malik El Shabazz have a little want some more. Right.
Yeah.
It's becoming more prevalent with my generation. I see more people seeking to give more knowledge now. I see more people looking to give back and trying. And I've been pushing for that for probably about 10 years now, and I am ecstatic that it's beginning. Because in order for anything to really become a success, it has to begin. And now we see even the ones that are getting killed, most of them are getting killed trying to do the good work that we're talking about needs to be done. And that's the trauma behind it. But some of those are probably that people that is being used to knock off the people that are going to make great movement. Some of these people ain't just getting killed by accident, and some of them ain't gang killings. I think some of these are being set up with a purpose because if you get a Nipsey Hussle, powerful, strong, influence out of this world, and talking some real knowledge for his whole career.
Yep.
And he's talking about trying to bring men together to gangs. The white man, the white people, whoever is set this shit up this way, they don't want that. That is bad for them, for gangs, for the Crips and Bloods to unite and come together.
It's bad for business. Okay.
Just like the drugs, the fentanyl. That fentanyl ain't just got in the street just on accident. They ain't putting that fentanyl in the street.
Well, right, or cocaine, or pick a drug.
Which one?
Pick any of them.
Yeah, and name me one black shipping company that ships all over the world while you're at it.
Right, but if you take down the people that are trying to be positive, the people like my whole company structure is to help people from the hood, the dope boys, the strippers, the hoes, all the people that the Christians don't want to be bothered with. Those are the people that we need because we know they got drive, they got hustle, and they got ambition to go do whatever it is. And guess what? They might take a little money here and there, but if they make enough money, if we put enough money in their pockets, we give them enough ideals, they're not gonna be able to be bought because they're gonna be where the money at. So if I give you enough ideals to get you enough money, guess who you're gonna be loyal to? Me.
And they already know how to make money.
Oh yeah, they hustlers by
They already
nature.
know how to make. That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Hey, I can take a nail to make $1. I'm not. I'm not ashamed, brother.
We don't need the Christians for real. The Christians can stay in their little hole wherever they doing. We need the people that's bucking the Christian system. That's really like, okay, I'm gonna get it by any means necessary, and we don't necessarily trust it. You're not gonna rock about baby us to sleep. We gonna take it and we gonna get it. However, we gotta get it. We just gotta teach them to think along the lines that is going to be productive for the bigger picture.
Brother Williams, you want to talk to us about the youth movement among the path of organization?
Well, I mean, as far as that go, again, our biggest thing is getting our people to, and it goes back to what I talked about even last week when I talked about the three S's: knowledge of self, knowledge of seeding, and knowledge of social engineering. We have to get our people to, go down some type of rites of passage so that they can be in line with themselves and love themselves so that they can do the work that it takes to be active in the community. Because one of the things that we, unfortunately, and this goes back to something Bill talked about, is it's not just good enough to want to have the willingness to want to be involved in community activism. If I don't correct myself and my baggage and the things that I bring, then I'm just gonna be all messy and invite messiness to the group, and then other people cling to that messiness. The next thing you know, we're just a bunch of individuals not getting anything done.
Yep.
Whereas we can do better as individuals trying to do some work than we could collectively in a community. So we have to actually take our people through a process of how to actually overcome these conditions so that you can be beneficial to a group environment. So there is some training and growth that has to take place. And we have to be willing to let go of our personal baggage in order to do so. And if you're not, then you're not ready. So we go into that talking about you have to be willing, capable, and ready. All three things have to come together to even be able to participate in a collective environment to do, work toward.
Bill,
The crabs in the barrel are not crabs in a barrel just because there's not they're not trying to just get each other. They're trying to get out of the barrel, and it's whatever they can do to get out of the barrel. They're not just in there like, oh, we in this, but we're gonna stay in this barrel. I'm just gonna. No, they're trying to get out the barrel. That is the problem. They want out the barrel. Everybody wants out the barrel.
Right. So first of all, you have to let people know how they got in the barrel in the first place, right? That's step one. Here's how you got in the barrel, right? Then you got to show them there is a way out other than tearing each other apart, other than pulling someone else down, right? There's a way out where we all can get out. Because once again, back to that American exceptionalism mythology, it's the quote unquote cream floating to the top, and there's a whole bunch of loaded language there too, obviously. But it's this thought that it's a game where only a few can win, right? Many will enter, but only a few can win. And
many are called, only few are chosen.
Right, and we've all heard this since we were, that high, right? I remember being told, "Oh, you're a precocious little Negro child, right? You're going to go places. You're going to be things." And people used to always try to tell me I was going to be a preacher. From the time I was 3 years old, people were trying to tell me I was going to be a preacher because I could speak, right, and think, which I think is fascinating, right? That they didn't say, "Oh, you're going to be an intellectual," or "You're going to be a leader." No, they said preacher, right? But whatever. We find ourselves in this situation where we have people who don't know how they got in the barrel, don't know how they're going to get out. And some of them are just thinking straight cannibalism, practically. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if I'm going to be in here, I'm taking you all down with me, right? And then feeding off of literally almost sometimes feeding off of each other. Until you, as you said, can, one, show them a way out. Hey, look, I've built this nice little ladder, this nice little scaffold, right? hey, if you follow this way, we can all get out. Not one of us, not two
With
of us.
picture instructions, because they ain't gonna read it if you don't do
With,
picture
right,
instructions.
right. But there's a right exactly. I've sent you all a video to your phones. Just click on the link. But yes, so that shows us the way out of the barrel. And you have to let people know there will come some things from outside of the barrel to kind of push you back down. Like it's not going to be smooth sailing. You're not going to walk out of the barrel, or we all would have gotten out, right? We'd be out by now if it were that easy. I'm letting you know now. You're going to be close. You can think, oh, things getting better, right, James? Hey, things getting better. Hey, my ass doesn't hurt as much anymore, right? Things must be getting better. The white man took his foot halfway out of my ass.
He
And
kissed
then,
me too.
right? And when you get almost out of the barrel, things are looking good. Then what just happened? Boom, right? You got to prepare people because like I said, you don't stay in a barrel for damn near 500 years if it's easy to get out, right? Clearly, there's going to be some challenges. Things are going to happen. You have to say, hey, we have a plan A, we have a plan B, we have a plan, however many plans it's going to take, we've got those, right? You have to have a central core, as we talked earlier about what it is. Here's our thing. Here's what our thing is. And we all hold to that, even when things absolutely suck. Because at some point, well, things already suck, but things might get worse, as Brother William said. And James is like, what do you mean worse? James didn't like that. but isn't this bad enough? What do you mean worse? Why is it got to get worse? Right? I know what you mean there, James. It doesn't sound great when someone says that. But I know what Brother Williams means, because people have got, getting back to crabs, the whole thing about boiling a crab, right, without even the top on, is you're slowly bringing up the temperature, right? The crab's like, it's a little warm, but I'm okay. It's a little warmer, I'm still all right, right? So it's a crab themed show, but until you can get a few of them out, right? You've led some successfully out of the barrel. Now people are like, oh, hey, she got Ray Ray out of the barrel. Oh, she got Monique out of the barrel. Monique, who used to be a crackhead. What? Mm-hmm. Right. So now word spreads, right? So now here's what will also happen. You will get some, crabs who are actually trying to take down your scaffold, right? So you got to watch out for them, as Brother Williams talked about, right? Geronimo Pratt found that out. Like, oh, these are the crabs are trying to tear a hole in the scaffold, right? Don't go to Dallas. You've got this. That's going to happen. Like, prepare. You have to have all this already laid out and be ready for it, because it's coming. The good stuff coming. The bad stuff definitely coming, right? We can always count on the bad stuff coming. But how do you negotiate all of it? And how do you let your people, even when it looks like, oh no, it's all falling apart, because at some point it will look like it's all falling apart. How do you let your people know, no, just hold on. It's going to be okay, right? You made it through all of this. You survived all the crap you survived.
I believe that's where we are right now. People think that everything is falling apart, but in order for things to really get better, they are in the space of getting worse first. And I've said this for the last 5 years, even before Trump got in the presidency. It is going to take some bad things to happen to shake things up. You got to shake the table a little bit in order for the things to really fester and come up. Otherwise, it looks like everything is okay. We're putting the Band-Aids on things, and there's no real healing. So until you rip that Band-Aid off, you're not going to get anywhere. And a lot of people are scared to rip the Band-Aid off.
Mm-hmm. Because it's going to hurt. That's why.
But the hurt can be good. People, that's the problem. People don't see hurt as good, but people don't realize that within the hurt you can learn lessons, and those lessons is where the blessings come from. Blessings just don't fall out of the sky. It comes from the lessons that you learn from the experiences, from the atmosphere, from the things that you learn from other people. That's where your lessons come and where your blessings are formed. Your blessings come from the things that, I learned something about that. I know not to do that. I know not, and people are scared to learn. People are scared to heal. Because once you heal, then who are you?
Mm-hmm. Right.
There you go.
Right.
But you lost your whole identity.
That's that rebirth.
Once again, I got to go back to one of Grandma's sayings. That's a poor man that can't take an ass whooping. Well, I was the poorest man on the block, because if you beat my ass, I'm getting you back. If I got to sneak you, drop out of a tree, it didn't make no difference to me. If you did something to me, you could look for that payback. Okay. Now, you talk about suffering. You know, if I have to suffer, that means that somebody else is going to suffer. Now, I'm not, I mean, and that's how I feel. If you stab me in
See,
the
but
back,
but if
if
you
you
start
hurt,
healing and you take your family into healing with you, then that suffering will be comforted because you were all going through this together.
but why do I have to suffer first? That's my
The
point. Why do
the only
why
suffering is
do
your
I
own
have to
healing,
suffer?
though. It's not a now. This is not the same Christian suffering that we was talking about earlier. This is not the suffering
No,
at
this
the
is the
sake of
new news.
somebody
This is that
else.
new news. Right. I got you.
Is
This
it?
is not being subject to somebody else's suffering in order for us to grow. This is us saying, you know what? Let me look in the mirror at myself. Let me see myself. Let me find. I mean, for some people, if you are religious, let me find the God in me, because if we're all made in God's image, then God created me this way for a reason. Now I need to figure out how He created me so I can figure out the reason He created me so I can live it.
Well, that's why I believe in spirituality and not religion. But
Right.
otherwise, we'll be on for another hour and a half, and I don't have that much money. But next, I hope to see everyone. Well, next week. I don't know. We'll see. But I know starting. I'm going to think very seriously about starting that series on Christianity, Bill. Maybe around the first of the year.
Okay.
We can do that. And Brother Williams, why don't you give us your final thoughts for this evening? And Dr. Casey, you can take us home.
Well, I would say to this, to our people, again, the things we've been talking about build around being able to recognize that we have to be more than the individual. So we have to start the path of being able to love yourself. You have to start the path of knowing what it means to be in self knowledge, in the knowledge of seeding, and in the knowledge of social engineering, which goes into the collective overview in where things are heading. So, as a people, let's embrace the idea of the fact that we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to free ourselves from our position and recognize again, like that, like I started with that one passage built off of what Dr. Casey said, is that the servant can never be greater than the master. It says that in your Bible. So, at what point will we turn ourselves from being someone else's servant into being dealing with self masters? So let me just leave you with that. Let's work toward developing self mastery, social mastery, and seeding mastery and collective operation. That's it.
Dr. Dr. Casey?
And I can piggyback off of that a little bit because self mastery is the key to everything, to your peace, to your health, to your ability to love and just find wholeness and fulfillment in life. So if you really want some self mastery, Speaking Freedom TV can help because I literally really talk about the Christianity. I talk about everything that will help you to understand yourself. The Spiritual Human Behavior book is geared around breaking down what is the barriers between who we supposed to be and who we are currently. And a lot of it is defense mechanisms. A lot of it is environmental, how we were raised and things like that. But if nobody gives you the information, then you won't realize that those things affect you deeply and in your spiritual nature and everything else. So take the opportunity to know yourself, learn yourself, get the knowledge from people that are willing to tell you something that you've never heard before, because people going to tell you the same thing over and over again. Find somebody that can tell you different and expand your knowledge base, and then grow from there. Research, get understanding for yourself. Don't go off of what nobody said. I don't care if I say something, go research it, go look it up. Google is your friend. Be friends with it. It will help you
And
out.
it's free.
Right. You ain't gotta buy it.
Hey, as always, I enjoyed talking with everyone. We will see you all next week, and have a great holiday. And I appreciate your time, everyone. You have a great night.
Bye.
All right. Always a pleasure. I look forward to our next one.